I think that Ron, welcome. Ron, you're going to really love today's text. I feel a little bit bad. Levi last week said that it was the best lesson we ever had. I think the material today is much more powerful. I'm Hashem. So let's get started. Okay. And again, I want to thank Reba. She did a very good job of editing the English text that I translated and dividing up the Hebrew so it's in sync with the English. So let's look inside. Very simple, very beautiful opening. Kushia me Ba'al Shem Tov, a question from the Ba'al Shem Tov. Be'inyin masha amru b'chol yom baskol yotzei mihar chorev, that in this that the Talmud says that every day a baskol, it's in the not religious text, it says an echo. Right, but we understand that a baskol means a heavenly voice. A heavenly voice comes out from Har Chorev. Har Chorev is another name for Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, generally from the word it's Sina. It comes from we change the sin to from the samech to a shin, and we say Sina, that the Jewish people hate the world, right? But the word Chorev is a more aggressive, from the word cherev, a sword. That's the idea of the Torah came to the world to push away non-believers, to push away materiality. The Torah came into the world to reveal divinity. So that's the inference when they call Mount Sinai Har Chorev, right? And that this heavenly voice comes out. Let's get going. Come, guys, who just came in. Karen, welcome. Lisetta, welcome. Okay, we're starting at the beginning again for you guys, but we're going to move fast. The Ba'al Shem Tov asked a question. It says, what is this that it says in the Mishnah that every day a heavenly voice, a heavenly voice comes out from the Har Chorev, Mount Sinai, and chaval, what a tragedy for the creations, from Torah, from the affront of the Torah. In other words, instead of being involved with Torah, we're involved in the world. We're ignoring the Torah, the affront to the Torah. Okay, that's one. V'kein masha amru, that it says in, I have it here. It says in Yeshayahu, the prophet Yeshayahu, Omer Shomer. Shomer is what's Omer, the watchman. Who is the watchman? That's God. God is the Shomer Yisrael. Like we put on the mezuzah, Shin Daled Yud. Shomer Delet Yehudi. God is called the Shomer, the keeper, the watchman, the protector of the Jewish people. Omer Shomer. And it doesn't have the text here, but what did he say? That God said to the Jewish people, this is what it says in the prophets. It's the 20, you can look it up yourselves. It's the 21st chapter of Yeshayahu, and it's the 11th verse. And what does it say? HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer Yisrael, that God said to the Jewish people, biyadi lahazrich lachem es ora boker lavi es cheshkas halayla alagoyim. It's in my ability. What does it say there? The Shomer says, day and night. Day and night. The day and night come. What does day and night come mean? That I have Jewish people listen to me. I can bring the light of the redemption. And I can bring the punishment on the non-Jews who treated you so horribly during the exile, right? And if you if you want to speed up the redemption, but the if you want to speed up the redemption, what do you have to do? You have to come and repent in tshuva. So this saying of God is also a heavenly voice that's constantly being resounded in the world. Two different messages, or really the similar message. One has to do with how we behave now, that we're an affront to the Torah, that we're not totally focused on spiritual things in our lives. and that where all the material things are secondary. And the second thing, the redemption. If we want the redemption to come quickly, we must do tshuva. We must come back to the spiritual completion in our lives. So these are two heavenly voices that are constantly being every day are being said. It said Shadar Shuhu Cruz. It says this is also a heavenly voice, right? Vekasha. So the Ba'al Shem Tov is asking, She'im ein shomea cruz lama machrizin. If nobody hears the announcement, then why are they announcing it? If nobody's right, ve'im yesh shomea kasha shachus machishay. And in this, you might just think that there are somebody that can hear, but our senses say no, it's not possible. Who we know from our experience that we don't hear heavenly voices. Maybe there's some guy in Flatbush or in Nicaragua that he hears the voice. No, but it doesn't make sense. Because who's going to say about themselves that they hear the heavenly voices, they hear the announcements? The who's going to say Shashama? Who's going to say about themselves that they hear the heavenly voices? And the Ba'al Shem Tov is like it's tongue in cheek. Even if you find somebody that does say he can hear the heavenly voices, no, what are you going to say about him? Right? We're going to right away say that he's a fool. The person that's going to believe him, he's a fool. That he's going to believe this guy. And what will we say? That he's a Navi Sheker. He's a false prophet. And what do you do to a false prophet? You kill him. Okay. So this whole business, what's the purpose of this whole section in the Torah? These two different things that say that there's a heavenly voice announcing the affront to the Torah and the key to the redemption. Okay, so what's the obvious answer? Okay, no, Karen or Sonny, Lena, what's the obvious answer? I mean, there's a story about Chasidic. There was once a deaf person, and whenever the Rebbe would speak, he would push and be unreasonably aggressive to be able to get into the front line. Okay, so they said, what is he doing? He can't hear. And the Rebbe said, even if his ears can't hear, his soul can hear. Okay, so what's our answer? We would say, okay, so the reason why the heavenly voices are announcing the affront to the Torah and the secret for the redemption, even if we can't hear it, our souls can hear. Okay, but the Ba'al Shem Tov doesn't accept that. He says no. He says, then don't call it an announcement. Call it something else. Right? But the whole thing is doesn't make sense. So he continues. 1 second. Oh, I skipped a page. Okay, 1 second. Okay. The Teretz, so this is what the Ba'al Shem Tov answered. He says the Isa B'Shas. Now, it's it's a Gemara. It's really a beautiful. It's a very interesting Gemara. Okay, and we're gonna. And it's. Should we do it inside? Let's look inside. Okay, he says, what does it say in the Gemara? This is in Chagiga, the page 5, right? And Chagiga is a very interesting Talmud because that's where it speaks about Kabbalah, all kinds of things about angels there. It's a very, very interesting tractate. So it says there, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania, there was an Amora called Yeshua ben Hanania. The heavy Koi Kami Kesar. He came before the Kesar. Now, what was going on at that time? There were also the Tzedukis. There were people that Jewish people, but they stopped believing in the Torah of the Talmud. They only believed in the Chumash, and they were constantly fighting with the Jewish community for who was going to be the leaders and who was going to represent the Jewish people in Rome. So that's what happened. So Rabbi Hanania, Yeshua ben Hanania, is there in front of the Caesar. Okay, it doesn't say, it's not clear there. It could have either been in Rome actually, or by the governor in Eretz Yisrael. And at the same time that he was there was an apikoros. There was a person, a non-believer that was there. Okay, the apikoros. So you're standing in front of the king. So they can't have a conversation when you're standing in front of the king. That would be impolite. Even if a person goes to a restaurant and you want to get the waitress or the waiter's attention, you don't shout out waiter. You move your hand or you make eye contact with them. So we have also situations where a person where we would use sign language. So that was going on here. The non-believer wanted to discourage Rabbi Hanania, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania. And so what does he say to him? He shows him, they're speaking in sign language. He shows him, Amma the hadrinhu more la'apemine, a nation that the master is turning his face from them. He's saying that the Jewish people are forsaken. Okay, we have the truth. And so what does Rabbi Hanania, Yeshua ben Hanania answer him? He shows him od yado netuya, that his hand is stretched out over us. Now, okay, so what's the simple answer? You say that the God has forsaken us, and I say he hasn't. You say that he's turned his face from us, and I say his hand is stretched over us. So okay, like he's still with us. Okay, so it's really there's a Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai he lived 200 years ago. He lived in Baghdad. Very, very famous, very prolific Torah scholar, also a Kabbalist. And so on this whole exchange, before we get to the end of the exchange, I hope this is interesting. It's so interesting to me. He says, what is this dichotomy between God hiding his face and which is what the Apikoros said, and what Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania says, that his hand is outstretched. So he says, the Ben Ish Chai says that that's a paradigm for exile, right? That when it says that what do we believe, even though it's true that God is hiding his face from us. There are tragedies that are happening. There are many things that we don't understand. It's very, very difficult times. Okay, if you don't believe that Mashiach is coming, you would think that Israel is in very great danger, and all the Jewish people living here, because our enemies are ganging up around us. Iran with their bombs, and the Palestinians in Israel. It's a very, very difficult time. We all agree that God is hiding his face. Okay, but in terms of we say mi besarai echsalaka, from my own flesh I can understand godliness. So just like I have a head is intellect, then I have my emotions, and so the head is the intellectual facilities, and the chest and the arms, that's the emotional facilities. So what's really being said here? The Apikoros said God is hiding his face from you, and Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania says it's true, but his arm is outstretched to us, even though he's hiding from us on an intellectual basis. He's not speaking to us directly, yet he's stretching out his arm, right? He's communicating to us through love and fear. Okay, he's communicating to us in a hidden way. Okay, which is really what was going on in the court of the Caesar. They were speaking in sign language. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanani is saying that God is speaking to us, but he's speaking to us through sign language. And that's what it means. His arm is stretched out to us, not the arm like he's making signs with his hand. No, he's not communicating to us through intellectual communication, through words, through prophecy. He's communicating to us through emotions, love and fear, and we're going to explain it as we go on. Okay, so what continues? Okay, so it doesn't bring the whole Talmud here. What happened is the king saw that they were using sign language, and he asks Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanina, "What were you saying?" And Yeshua ben Hanina right away told him. He said to us, the Jewish people are forsaken, that God is hiding his face from us. And I said to him, God is always stretching his arm out to us, that he's still with us, even though in a subliminal, not in a clear intellectual way, but a subliminal, undercover emotional way. Okay, and so then they ask the non-believer, the Epicurus, do you know what did you say to Rabbi Yeshua? He said, I said to him that the Jewish people are forsaken people. And what did he answer you? And he said, I didn't understand. And so they took him out and they killed him. Okay, and why? Because he says, how dare you use sign language in the presence of the king, right, and not understand what's being communicated to you. Okay, that's the end of the Gemara. Okay, he says, somebody who doesn't know how to use sign language, what are you doing using it in front of the king? Now we have to understand why didn't they just talk openly? And what's the purpose of the Gemara going through this whole story? So now he's going to explain. Is that clear so far? Okay. Again, Ba'al Shem Tov asked the question, right? What is this that the Torahs are making all these announcements and we can't hear it? Okay, that's the first question. The second question he asks is, what is this Talmud speaking about using sign language in the presence of the king? What is it talking about? What's the whole purpose of it? Okay, now he's going to explain. Well, I think we're in the English. We're going into the third section. Who perish? Okay, who perish. So the Ba'al Shem Tov explained the Yotzi Lanim that we've learned something very important from this. Remez Musar, a hint at a special teaching, the Inyan Hakruzim Shalamayla, but in connection with the announcements, the messages that God is sharing with us, the heavenly voices that are speaking out constantly. She'eno dibur, they're not language at all. Nachon, it's true. It says, what's the actual word? It said, Yotze Basko me Harchorev u'Machrezes. A heavenly voice comes out from Harchorev and announces. But okay, but it's not speech. He says, She'ena dibur. Ki ein omer ve'ein devarim sham lamayla, because there's no speech and there's no speakers, right? There in the heavens. Ela oila machshava. Everything goes on in a way of thinking. God transforms the world initially from thought, and the thought is transformed into language to create the world. But on an ongoing basis, how does God communicate with the world? Through thought. Ki yadibru gashmi, because speech is something material, something physical. And what's the proof? That we say that just like we say that I can learn about God from my body, just like I have intellect and emotions and action. The way that God relates to the world is through intellect, emotions, and action. The same way it says that the Malchus Da'ara is like Malchus Da'Rekia. The kingship in this physical world is a reflection of kingship in heaven. Okay, and just the way that it's not appropriate for the servants and visitors and advisors of the king to be carrying on their private their conversations, even their conversations in front of the king. It's not polite. Okay, so also the way that the heavenly court communicates with us is through non-verbal means. Okay, and that's what he says. The ein derech eretz is not polite. The daber hamelech im sar, for the king to speak or to communicate with his ministers, with his servants, with his yoatzav, his advisors. Ki im beremes. All of the conversations that go on in front of the king are all in hints. Okay, and he says that the proof is that at the time of the Ba'al Shem Tov, he says there was very developed kingdoms in the Arab community, in the Muslim community, right? And there they had a lot of rules, and one of the rules was that you don't carry on conversations in the presence of the king. Okay, so what have we learned so far? So far he's saying that just like in the palace of a king down here in the world, that we don't carry on normal speaking. Everything is done in a way of sign language or hints or behind the scenes. Okay, the same way. That is how God is communicating to each of us all the time. This is what the Gemara is trying to tell us. All of these announcements, these heavenly announcements, that come out from the king, Melech Ha'olam, the king of kings. It's all beremes. It's all hints to us that a person has to be constantly watching out how God is communicating with him, right? If a person is on a very perfected level, if a person is very disciplined, there are some people that are very disciplined in their thoughts, okay, in how they express themselves, okay, and so that person, God communicates to them through ideas that come to them. Okay, all of a sudden they'll have an idea that they'll feel this divine energy and they want to come up closer to Hashem, and they'll do something about it. Okay, or they'll feel we're going to speak about it later. They'll feel fear and they'll fear in the physical world, and they'll understand that it's connecting them to the time to experience fear of God and to act in such a way, or sometimes it'll be something very, very happy, that it's a time of kindness and joy from heaven, and a person will serve Hashem that way. Okay, some people it's communicated to them directly through their thoughts. A thought will arise in their head. Some people it comes through their emotions. Some people it comes through seeing something in another person, right? That's a third level. And sometimes it happens to do with hashgacha pratis, with divine providence, things that are happening around. That's a fourth level. There are different levels of how God communicates to the person, depending on how, not complete, how what's the word? Mushlam. No, how do you say mushlam? Dara, mushlam. From the word complete, how complete a person is. If a person is on a more refined level, God will communicate them through their thoughts. If they're on less refined, through their emotions. If they're even less refined, it will be through seeing taking messages from how other people behave. And the lowest level would be how seeing things that happen to us in the world, or it could be a person could have all four of them. Okay, so let's continue. So he says, we have to understand the hints, the remes, the non-verbal communication, the announcements that are sometimes that come into a person's thoughts. That a person of a person thinks all the time about how he's not doing enough to connect to Hashem, and I have to push the world away and be more involved in spiritual things. Why does he think that? Why does a person have these thoughts of coming closer to Hashem? Because of the heavenly announcements that they're bringing into that person their thoughts. Oh, like I said, Oyedei Shar Devarim, or other things. Hanodaim, to whichever person has eyes in his mind, that his intellect has eyes, that he's seeing, he's making an effort to see how God is communicating to him. God will find a way to communicate. Okay, so now the third paragraph. I think. Dara, it's time to move up the page. Thank you. All right. He says, that we, okay, so again, so what did we said? We said that the cruzim is how God communicates. Let's just stop for a minute. Let's just stop. We're going to stop here for a second. Everybody think for a minute, right? Okay, how God communicates to them. How? What did you see today or hear? What thoughts came into our heads? What emotions happened, right? That really were God communicating to us from heaven. Okay, there's a story about the Babich Rebbe's Rebbetzin, his wife, that she used to drive. She had a driver. Okay, she actually drove. She had a driving license. She drove a car. I don't know the story. There's a story there. I don't know what the story is, but she actually drove herself sometimes. The Rebbe always had a driver. It's not clear that the Rebbe even had a driving license. I don't think he did. The Rebbe said had a driving license, but she also had a driver. One of the was called Mashbakim, Meshamshe Bekodesh. One of the people that managed the Rebbe's household would be the driver for the Rebbetzin. And it's not clear from the story where she was going, but we know for sure that she sometimes went to doctor's appointments. She used to go to the Brooklyn Public Library. There's a massive library about 20 avenue blocks from her home. Okay, she was driving someplace, right? And they used to always drive the same way. And because they were working on the road, the driver had to go a different way. And immediately the Rebbetzin noticed, okay? And they're coming down the street and they see that there's a woman with children standing on the street, okay? And there's police taking out, or bailiffs, I don't know, maybe they weren't police, but they were people taking out they're taking out their things, and the family is bereft of a mother and children, okay? And the Rebbetzin says to the driver to stop, okay? And she sends him out to find out what's going on. And he speaks to the bailiff or whatever, that there was a court order because they hadn't paid their rent in a long time, that they were being asked to leave. Okay, and so the Rebbetzin, again, it's a fairly long story how she said to drive back and came back and communicated to her, and she came back again, and she was mavar, and how much is the bill, and on the spot she wrote a check, and she made sure the driver went to the bailiff, and he said, how much money do you need to have her come back into the apartment? And the Rebbetzin wrote was quite a large check to cover the rent for an extended period of time. Okay, and so later, when she described the story to one of her friends, and they told the story to other people afterwards, she said that because they never drove that way, and since God took them out of their regular route, and she saw this woman being evicted from her apartment, she knew that the reason why they had come that way was because she had to do something about it. In other words, it's guys, it's not about the cruise. It's not about hearing the divine message. It's about what we do about it. Okay, and it's I saw in one of the books of the writings of it says, you know what, if I live in Israel. I remember, living in New York, when the president of the United States would come to New York, all the streets, everything would stop because the motorcades, and it would be impossible to but everybody would be talking about it because it would disrupt people's life. Okay, so how much more so if there was a king, and the king was coming to your town, okay, and then we would right away be filled with awe and fear, and if he is a good king, with love, okay, and it would affect our thoughts and our emotions and even our actions. Well, how much more so if the King of Kings, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Malchei Hamlochim, the King of Kings, the one who creates the world anew every minute, the world that no corner of the world is without him, the King who no, right, the King of Kings. We shouldn't be, right, and who's always here. So then we shouldn't, just like if a king of flesh and blood was going to come to our place, we would be filled with thoughts about him. So the King of Kings, who fills every corner, okay, it's not appropriate that all the things that happen around us are not going to be hints to us that we have to renew and doubly renew our connection to spiritual things. Okay. All right. So that's who we're holding now. That person has to be constantly sensitive, aware of what's going on around them, to what messages. I think about a few months ago, I told the story about the Ba'al Shem Tov, that the Ba'al Shem Tov was once he used to, before he revealed himself as a Jewish leader, he would walk around in the Corinthian mountains as a child and then as a young adult, right? And once a mountain lion actually came out towards him, and at first he felt afraid, and then he realized that the word for lion in Hebrew, Aleph, Resh, Yud, and Hey, is the same letters as the word for Yira, and that the reason why he was seeing this lion is to remind him that he has to renew his connection of awe and fear of God. And he closed his eyes and he meditated on feeling the presence of God everywhere around him. And when he opened his eyes, the animal was ripped into pieces. Okay. And the question is, why did it have to be that the animal was ripped into pieces? It should be that maybe the lion disappeared, that it ended up, it was an illusion, or maybe it ran away. What's this idea that the animal was ripped apart? Okay, and the answer, from my perception, the answer is to show us that everything that happens in the physical world is to elicit from us a perception of what's going on in the spiritual world. And as soon as the Ba'al Shem Tov thought about the divine awe and fear that the animal was supposed to elicit in him, then the animal became null and void. His spiritual perception overpowered completely the physical perception. I've been talking for 40 minutes now. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, the one thing that struck me, that you're saying we have to distinguish between the messages that God is trying to send us, and we have memories of what we did last night or what we're planning to do. So there's things that we fill our head with. It's not all God's messages. I mean, some of it is our own planning and our own thoughts, and our minds are so full of thoughts that maybe it keeps God's messages away. But it's not what we just think of, that therefore it's God speaking to us.
First of all, you just made me think, reminded me of something that I saw. Second. I wrote it in my notes someplace. 1 second. There were two things that it said. It said one thing is that first of all, if God, Ron, it's the right question, and I want to answer how I perceive it. But I think everybody is going to have to come up with their own thing. But everybody's going to have to begin to look for the ways that God communicates with them, because God communicates with each person in different ways. But first of all, since the whole world is divinity, okay, then and if we really had the eyes to see and the ears to hear, we could see God's message in everything that happened, even what we did last night, even what we're planning for tomorrow. In other words, there's some level where every single thing is a revelation of divinity. Okay, but since we're not, it talked about the tzaddikim, that they could understand the language of the birds and the language of the animals and the language of the seasons and the language of the wind. Each thing has a spiritual identity. Okay, so we're not able to do that, and it's true. If every time we're gonna, if every time something happens, we're gonna say, "Oi, what's the divine message?" Though I'm just going to interrupt myself for 1 minute. I just reminded me, of a story from Baba Sali. Baba Sali, whoever, I'm sorry, we've spoken about it many times before. I got a bracha for Baba Sali to Chai Bracha and I should marry, and I'm sure one of the reasons why we're still married is because of that blessing from Baba Sali. Okay, but it says once that he was a frail person, and he constantly had an entourage around him, and he was once walking and he tripped. So everybody jumped to pick him up, and he said, "No, don't pick me up." So it was such a weird situation. There are all these people standing around him, and he's lying on the floor. And he says, "Now you can pick me up." And he says, "Okay." And they asked him why. Wouldn't you let us pick up? Because he said, "I wanted to understand why I fell. What was the message that God was trying to communicate to me about why I fell?" Okay, so I'm saying, so if we really had the ability to hear and to see everything that happened around us, but on the other hand, it would, for most people, that would incapacitate us. We'll be constantly hearing the messages and thinking what we're supposed to do about it, and a person would stop functioning properly. So yeah, you have to say, you have to just like you said, you have to differentiate between the things that are day-to-day occurrences and when actually God is communicating to us. Okay, when something out of the ordinary happens, like the Baba Sali falling, right? Or like hearing something unexpected, or seeing something unexpected, or a thought that comes into our mind that we weren't. It's not logical that it should have come into our mind at that particular point. Those types of messages, we have to ask ourselves, what is God trying to tell me? And what should I be doing to increase my connection to Hashem through that message? Okay, I'm agreeing with you 100%. If we'd go crazy if we're trying to find how in every single thing how God is communicating with us. But okay, is that okay?
Yeah, it's helpful. I mean, I think if we still use our own brains to figure out what we think God is trying to tell us, we're still going to potentially end up with the wrong message, because it's our head. It's not.
Yeah, fine, but okay, I hear you, and yet all there is what is. The Ba'al Shem Tov's premise is just the way in that story from the Talmud, how they were communicating in signed language. Okay, the reason why the Talmud is bringing that story is to tell us that God is communicating to us through sign language, right? Not through, he doesn't send us a letter. He doesn't say, Shaul, get up and go do ABC, right? He's sending us hints. And a person has to think, what is the hint? Okay, by the way, it's part of the humanistic psychology, about thinking, right? A person's supposed to think of positive things. What positive things happened to me today? Okay, instead of thinking about negative things. Okay, well, if a person spends his time thinking about how much God is blessing him, okay, then that would itself arouse an emotion in a person that I have to also do something for God. He's doing all these good things for me. I have to do something for him. Okay, each person has to see what the message. Let's finish and then we'll see if it's any clearer. Okay, please. Anyway, so he said, Shalo yeh mechlal elu anemar behem, al tiyu kesus koperet she'ein have b'mesig v'resim. Okay, the Ba'al Shem Tov is saying, how do we understand it? Right, there's a horse. Horses have a bridle and a bit. Right, mesig is a bridle and the resin is a bit. Okay, there are some animals, right, that they understand that the bridle and the bit is for them to be pointed in the proper direction of their master, and so they do it happily. And there are some that only it turn when the driver pulls hard on the thing, okay, because it's stupid, right? And there are some that fight against the bridle and the bit, because and they're literally a prisoner, right? Fighting all the time. Okay, so we shouldn't be like those, like a stupid animal. We have to understand that just like the bridle and the bit are there to direct the animal, and that's for its benefit. Okay, and it's going, when it gets to where it's going to be fed and it's going to be treated with respect by its owner, etc., etc. The same way, when God is communicating to us those special messages, those things that are perhaps just a little bit out of the ordinary, those things that are here, hure tshuva, the thoughts of reconnecting to Hashem. And it's the same experience. I'm doing the same thing. I can sit there and pray and I can just read the words and I'm finished. I did it. I fulfilled the mitzvah. Or I can say to myself, I had thoughts of doing tshuva. Maybe I just have to spend a little bit extra time, not even extra time, extra focus. It takes the same amount of time thinking about how I pray and putting it into my life. Okay, right. That's this idea of identifying how God is communicating to us. Okay, rather than being an animal that's a prisoner in the bridle and the bit, he's supposed to realize that the bridle and the bit is guiding it. So he says, so that is, we have to be when something happens in the world, right? Eza pached, the yira, is a fear or awe. Yedu, the person has to know, right? You hear, a person hears about. I just heard that in Pakistan or something. My wife was telling me that God protect them. There are thousands of people killed because of flooding. Thousands of people. Okay, when a person hears that and he realizes how good it is in my life, and how, thank God I live on a mountain, and thank God everybody here in our group is safe. Okay, when something happens and it arouses in a person of some sense of fear and awe, it has to know that this is a hint from heaven. They have to literally attack they have to attach themselves to the source of that fear, to go above when a physical what do you call it, when a catastrophe happens. Okay, God is trying to get our attention and to say, who's running the world? God is running the world. Okay, and we have to act accordingly. Is a simcha when something happy happens in the world, right? A person has to connect to the happy things, excuse me, in his service to God. The wise person will hear the Yosef Lekach, and he'll take it and develop it. Okay, that each person has to, the reason why the Ba'al Shem Tov is telling us this is we have to figure it out on ourselves, for ourselves. How is God communicating to us? What does he want us to do with it? okay, and how our lives are supposed to be changed accordingly. Okay, that now, before before I ask any questions, I'm going to say I heard a story about the Ba'al Shem Tov that I want to share. No, wait, no, first, no. I need 5 minutes. How much do we have? We have 10 minutes. I need 5 minutes to tell a story about the Ba'al Shem Tov and a joke. Okay, but before that, what do we say? I'm sure there's a. Oh, I now remember. I saw something else. Just one more thing. It says. When I was becoming observant in the early 70s, and at that time, I used to go to classes, and for bring-ins, it was a big movement of doing tshuva all over New York. There were incredible opportunities. I mean, Rabbi Riskin would speak in Manhattan on a weekly basis, and Rabbi Freifeld would speak in Far Rockaway on a regular basis, and every couple of weeks, Shlomo Kalbach and Meir Fund was his chavrusa, and other people would make Shabbatons. It was really a spiritual wonderland in those years. And so once they were saying that why is it by Jewish people that if you're not busy on Friday night and Shabbos, the whole week wasn't worth it? What is this? What is it that drives Jewish people, especially people that are not religious people that are not observant, to be so involved in having to do something? You have to go out Friday night. You have to have some activity Shabbos by day. And Rabbi Fund's answer was, I'm not even sure if he's still alive. It was a very special teacher. He said because they feel it's Shabbos, and they can't experience it. They don't know. They don't have the vessels. They don't know what Shabbos is, but they feel that they're missing something, and so they have to work doubly hard to keep themselves busy, because they to try to fill that void in themselves. And that's one of the commentaries. The Talmud Yaakov Yosef was one of the main students of Ba'al Shem Tov. He says that if a person doesn't make the effort to hear the messages that God is trying to communicate to them and to act upon it, the opposite happens. They all the time feel unfulfilled. They feel like they're missing something, and they don't know how to deal with it. And that's a reason why a person it would waste a lot of their life on silly things. A person might get drunk or use drugs or get involved in material pleasures. Why? Because he feels that there's something going on, and he's not able to discover what it is. Okay, and so this is an incredible, innovative idea from the Ba'al Shem Tov, that each person has the responsibility to figure out not just what God is telling them, but how to bring it into action. Okay, now I'm finished. Except for I need a story. Anybody have a question? Lisetta, Karen, Sunny, Dara, Ken. Is that Nachum? Is that Nachum? If it is Nachum, say hello. What do we have to say? Either I bored you all to death, or you're in shock from what's going on.
Baruch Hashem.
Oh, it's Ken. Hi, I see which Ken it is. All right, so forget. There's a joke. The joke was that there was a priest, and there was a rabbi in the town and a priest, right? And the bishop was making the priest crazy. He says we have to figure out a way to put the Jews in their place. And every time you have a debate with the rabbi, you lose the debate. So the priest he's under pressure from the bishop. What is he going to do? He has to figure out what he's going to do. He said we're going to have a silent debate. We're going to talk by by sign language. Okay, and this way he knows that the rabbi won't be able to outtalk him because it's in sign language. Okay, so the priest goes first. Oh, you know what? I forgot the joke. 1 second. No, yeah, I'm good. I'll tell the joke next week. I can't remember the part of the punchline. I'm going to tell a story though. Okay, the story is about the Ba'al Shem Tov. The Ba'al Shem Tov said there was once a person that had like muscular. There was a farmer that lived not far away from the Ba'al Shem Tov, right? And he was a coarse person, but he was fairly well-to-do. But his kid had some kind of a nerve disease. They call it shituk. Right, like something lower lane, shouldn't, like muscular dystrophy or something. So all of a sudden, so it's getting worse and worse and worse, and it gets to a point where the kid can't move, and they have to feed him with a spoon, and they have to open up his lips, and it's tragic. So he hears that the Ba'al Shem Tov is a healer, right? And even though he's not particularly a believer in tzaddikim, he takes his son in a wagon, and they bring him, on a stretcher, and they bring him into the Ba'al Shem Tov, and he asks the Ba'al Shem Tov to heal him. So Ba'al Shem Tov looks at the farmer, and he says, "I'll heal. I can heal him, but I want you to give me 100 golden coins." And the farmer says, 100 golden. He's like that. His whole life was about bargaining and getting money for his farm products, and he says, so he starts his bargaining. He says 100 golden coins, never. Okay, so the Ba'al Shem Tov said, all right, you can give me 50 golden coins, and 50 golden coins, forget it. The most I'm going to give you is 40 coins, and that only if we do a deal. Okay, so he gives them he takes out the Ba'al Shem Tov agrees. He takes out the bag of golden coins from his doublet, right? And he hands it to him. And the Ba'al Shem Tov opens up the bag and throws all the coins out the window. And the farmer, he sees all this money that he worked so hard for, that he gave to heal his son, and the Ba'al Shem Tov threw it out the window, and he runs to get the coins. So the Ba'al Shem Tov says to the boy who's lying on the pallet, he says, "Go and help your father. Gather the coins." So the kid gets off the bed and he goes outside to help his father. His father sees the kid get up. We didn't need the Ba'al Shem Tov to heal you at all. Let's just go home. He cuts the coins and he left. Okay, and is that clear? I keep losing people. I must be saying something wrong. So the what's the learning from the story? The Ba'al Shem Tov, right? Everything he did for holiness, right? Even when he healed a person, it was just to arouse in the farmer, right, an understanding of the spiritual power of God in the world and the spiritual power of tzaddikim. Okay, even though the farmer didn't get it. Okay, one question with 3 minutes to go. Well, 1 second.
So I have
Sonny, I want to. Sonny, do you agree with that concept that God is speaking to you all the time?
I do, but I also agree that it's very hard to decipher which messages are from Hashem and which messages are not. Very, very hard. I mean,
okay, so what do you think?
I find in my daily life that I wish that I knew which messages are from Hashem. What does He want? I think about that a lot. Nothing to do with this shiur. I think I spend a lot of time wondering, are you trying to tell me something? When things happen or come up, I do always wonder, is this one of your messages, or are you not connected to this?
So
it's a daily struggle.
Understand. So what's the answer then? What do you do about it? I hear exactly, and I'm asking you, what do you do about it?
Well, that's why I struggle with the question, because if it's a message from Hashem, I do want to understand what it is He wants, and so that I can, follow that.
So one of the points and I didn't say it clearly, I'm going to say it clearly now, that the Ba'al Shem Tov said from this whole section is that anything, any thought that we have, or something that we see, or whether a feeling of fear or a feeling of happiness, anything that, if that happens, if we can do something, if the message we take from it can bring us closer to God, we've accomplished something. We're already listening to what God's message is. Okay, maybe God. With just one second, I said maybe God. I want you to talk, but I'm saying, but it could be that you want God to say, should I buy this green dress or the blue dress? Should I take my summer vacation in Italy or in Florida? Okay, those are the kind of things that we want. And the Ba'al Shem Tov is saying that that's not necessarily what God is communicating to us. He's communicating to us how we can come closer to God. What's the avenues that are open to us to make our divine service more real and tangible?
The problem is, Rabbi Leiter, that it's one thing to receive the message, but it's another when difficult things are happening to us to know what is the message. What does Hashem want from me? That's
absolutely. Absolutely. And the answer that I say to myself is that as long as I do something extra, then the message that God gave me wasn't in vain. Okay, that I have to. Yeah, go ahead, Sonny. Yeah,
I think that sometimes I believe in messages from Hashem when I see a path to, something comes up and I see a path to doing something that makes something better for someone else. Mm-hmm. That's when I'm pretty sure it's come from Hashem. There are messages that I'm not sure about, but when the message is inviting me on a path that I can do something, and just by doing it or not do something, maybe not say the words that are on the tip of my tongue, just by doing or not doing a particular thing, I see an avenue to making something better for someone else, that someone's going to benefit. And every time I recognize that just before the action or non-action, I think, that was Hashem's hand here, that was some kind of an intervention that I was supposed to listen to.
Okay, I think intervention is a beautiful, it's exactly the right word in this context.
When you told the story about this farmer, when you got to the part where you mentioned that his son came outside to help him, and the
Ba'al Shem Tov told him to get up and go help your father.
Right. And then the farmer sees his son come out as he's collecting those coins. He sees his son walking outside. And I thought the end of the story would be that the farmer gave the Ba'al Shem Tov everything he has. And why wouldn't you?
That's right.
The ending surprised me.
That's right.
But that's what I mean. When something happens like that, then you do the good thing. And he did the bad thing. He collected.
But the lesson from the story, okay, that's the counterintuitive part of the story. In other words, the farmer, instead of appreciating that the Ba'al Shem Tov did a miracle, he took his son and he ran with the money. Okay, and the teaching from the story is about the Ba'al Shem Tov, that when the Ba'al Shem Tov asked for the money in the first place, that's where I thought, what does the Ba'al Shem Tov need this guy's money for? Okay, no, but I guess there was something in there with the money, right, and the farmer and the son, that it was part of the refuah, part of the healing, that it got the kid to get up and to go help his father. It's something subtle in there but I'm also not getting. But the story was to show that the Ba'al Shem Tov, everything he did was just for the sake of spreading holiness. He didn't need the guy's money. Okay, so there's two separate teachings. Okay, but
I think it's still very. I mean, apart from the difficulties in one's life, you know, there are also people I see who are suffering more than a human being can be asked to cope with.
Okay, so
and to see a message, I mean, I think all you can say is that we don't understand. We just do not know. We don't understand. Sometimes we're lucky. We can understand what Hashem wants from us, but for a vast amount of the time, we just do not know.
okay, but this is a subject that we've had with us also before, especially, you know, with Ron, we've had to come before. But again, there's two different things here. Remember the whole message last week was about how I'm nothing, but my actions are can go to the highest level and draw all the energy into this world. Okay, that dichotomy, that kind of exists. On the one hand, one message of seeing a person suffering, right, is you're right. How do I understand it? I can't understand it. The second message, though, is how can I help them? Maybe, you know, if that's the reason, just like Sonny said, if that's the reason why I'm seeing that other person suffer, okay, it's because I'm supposed to do something about it. Okay, the why they're suffering, that's something else, and it could be that, you know, I don't want to sound stupid, but it could be that it's the last thing to clean the slate for them for to go to the highest level of heaven, or I don't know. You know, that's suffering it's serving. We believe it's serving some purpose. Okay, and I don't know what that purpose is, but if it arouses in me the ability to act and to do something and to help them, that's the communication that I'm supposed to be seeing. Okay, in other words, saying, wow, I don't know why this has happened to them. If that stops me from acting, that's the wrong message. That's not a divine message. Asher Bora Elokim Lassos. We say Friday night in Kiddush. It's the first chapter in Genesis. Asher Bora Elokim Lassos, that God made the world to act. So I'm more Wendy. I'm more responding to how you spoke about it. I'm just listening to your voice. It's true, it's not understandable, but if that not understanding stops a person from acting, that's not the message that God wants us to hear. In terms of what we learned here, it's seeing a person suffering is supposed to say to me, what can I do to help them? Then I'm transforming the world. I'm not chasam. I'm not giving you a hard time. I'm just that was very clear to me. Okay, you know, guys, I gotta go. I have to go. Thank you, Sonny. Go ahead. You want to say something? Go ahead, Sonny. Speak.
I just wanted to say you're answering the question about what if someone else is suffering, but I think the question is, what if I'm suffering?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So okay. First of all, if Hashem should help you to find all the answers, so you don't have to suffer any longer. That's first. That's what more can I do? And if I some way that I can help in a specific way, then I hope you'll reach out to me. But if I can't speak about your situation, I can speak about my situation. For the most part, the difficulties that I have in my life fit with who I am as a person, where I came from and where I'm going to, and what I want to and what I need to accomplish. I think that they can, the things that I struggle with make a lot of sense in terms of who I am, and I think that God gives each person the tools of how to overcome on some level those challenges.
Well, I pose
Okay.
that question because I think that's the question we're all asking, because we're all,
Right.
provided with suffering in life as we live it. And we do find ourselves asking, what is the purpose of my suffering? What do you want? What do you want from me?
Mm.
I think we all ask that when we're suffering,
Right.
because that is a message from him too.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. And so, in exactly the same way that when we see a problem outside of us, God wants us to do something about that. That's why He's showing it to us. When the problem is something within us, okay, he wants us to try to find a solution that I can serve Hashem in a more complete way.
I think it's about how we respond to the situation.
That's what I was trying to say. And thank you very much. And
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily make it any easier.
Yeah.
But again, my son, we had a fight with one of my children just now because he wanted to do a cosmetic type of surgery. I tell you the truth, I took him to the procedure on Thursday, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of kids his age going for some kind of a laser surgery so he wouldn't need glasses. Okay, I don't know, LASIK or something it's called, and it's like a craze here in Israel. It's a madness, and the Rebbe was not into the cosmetic surgery so much. Anyway, so we wrote to the Rebbe. He wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, actually gave a bracha to somebody else in a different situation, but on the condition that he make a positive resolution. So my son made a positive resolution, a strong positive resolution. He I don't know what it is, but he said he did, and then I took him to the surgery, and he's been suffering it's 4 days. It's just been horrible here. He's been suffering. And and we're praying I hope he's going to come out of it. There's a, so, but what can you do? I told you that long story. What can we do? All we can do is to find what's the right way to act. I think we spoke about it a few months ago. The Rebbe, there was a woman who lost her husband in the war, in the Yom Kippur War, and she couldn't manage her life. She was so obsessed with the tragedy of her husband taking away from her when the family was just beginning. And the Rebbe said to her that she should share her experience with other widows. And at the end of the story was that action not only pulled her out of her depression, but it transformed her life and got her completely back on track and started a new family. The miracles after miracles. Okay, so even I'm speaking to myself, Sonny, and Wendy and Ron, and Lizette, and everybody. The challenges that God sends to other people and to us have a similarity. What are we supposed to do? To do something. Don't just sit there, right? Okay. What do we say? That's a joke. We said it before, right? By not Jewish people, they say that don't just to stand there, do something. We say don't just do something, stand there. Think. Don't just think about why this is happening to me, and what does God want me to do? And as any time that an action replaces inaction, then we're moving forward. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. God bless. Have a beautiful week, everybody.
I wish your son a refuah shlema.
Amen. Amen. I'm gonna go out now. I'm gonna tell him to go. We're gonna take a walk together. Okay. All right. It was really a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Rabbi.
God bless
Thank you
everybody.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Shabbat tov.
Cool.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Let's see. Turn off the recording. Wait, Derek, turn off the recording. How do we do this? Yes.